All right, this should be a quick video. How much did I charge my neighbor to do a brake job? So, complete brake job without the brake bleeding. It was just replace pads and rotors all around. And in the process of doing that, we realized that the sway bar, I want to say it's the sway bar link. Yeah, it's a sway bar. And the lower control arm bushing was torn. The passenger front ball joint there, lower ball joint was torn, and the sway bar link was torn. The rubber was torn, and it was just whatever, nothing in there grease wise. So I only saw those two when I had pulled the wheels off. This is just me rambling with the Honda here. The car in question is a 2012 Hyundai Elantra. Hopefully I said that right. But yeah, I made a video asking people, what do you recommend for tools? I actually didn't put out all the tools. Whatever you saw in that video, that's the tools I had that I took out. I didn't preemptively stage my tools and all this stuff. I figured I knew where stuff was if I needed it, and I was not familiar with the car, so I don't know what size. Like, I didn't know it was a 21 millimeter lug nut, all that stuff. But what did I learn? Let's see. I started at the driver front, and I took a pause because normally I'm working on my own cars, my own fleet of cars. And I took pause and I was like, do I know what I'm doing? And I just went to work. Started removing off, the brackets and stuff. And yeah, greasing the pins, all this stuff. Making sure that, they slid, clean them up, all that stuff. Rotors. I actually had 2 rotor screws, and I was excited to use my air hammer because I know when he made mention of those pesky rotor screws, I was like, I have just a tool for it. And it's that Mayhew shape breaker. I'm not sure if Tecton, actually. But I was just able to use my, I told him I had the right tool for it. And it was this bad boy right here, but I didn't need to use it at all with my air hammer. I just used, they were snug. They were getting corroded. I just used my impactor just by hand, apply some torque. And you can see I didn't use a glove, so my nails are gross. Just got to clean that up. Yeah, I should have. He's a mechanic for United. So he knows about wrenches. He's an engine guy. So he knows about wrenches and stuff. So yeah, and then I put those back, and he's also of the belief that if it's on the car, then you put it back. So I always put back those rotor screws because I know how to remove them, and I have the right tool to remove them. And then prior to putting them back in, I just usually put some NICs on it just to make sure they're not stuck in the future. Clean up the hubs, all that stuff, spun them, make sure there's no bearing noise, all that stuff. But yeah, not a whole lot. There was I would say one thing I learned, as you're working on, you have the wheel off. Obviously, I was using my lift, which the car was rated for just under 4,000 pounds. So this worked out being 6,000 pounds and the car being smaller. But anyway, took the car up, and, as you're working on the wheels, you want to turn it and all this stuff to get a better angle on the bolts. Well, one of the things that you got to be careful of is pulling on the backing plate. Because on the driver's side rear, we assembled everything and then kind of spun it. And it was making a little brushing noise. And we're like, all right, maybe we'll just take it back off. But certainly on the front here, we got up here and then, do the brake job and then subsequently the suspension portion. Either him or I was pulling on the rotor, but was holding on to the backing plate at some point in time. And so the backing plate was bent and started touching the rotor at the bottom. And in fact, the lower ball joint, I had my Sunex short under hoist holding up the suspension simulating weight on the suspension prior to me tightening the suspension bolts. And I didn't realize that the lower ball joint caught the lip of the backing plate. So I had to bend that out. I might have punched a hole in his backing plate slightly, but I don't think he realized, because I was using a long chisel. It's not a flathead. In this case, it's a long chisel. So I was using this bad boy, and I punched a hole. So I should have looked for something more blunt, but at least I needed a sharper point to get. I don't know. I could have done that better. So that's something I learned. Don't pull on the backing plate. Make sure you're cognizant of, if you're trying to turn the wheel, make sure you're like, turning, holding onto the rotors or something, the caliper brackets or something. Because if you pull on the backing plate, chances are it's going to create noise, and you're going to wonder what it is, and you're going to chase your tail. But as we spun the hub, kind of heard the little noise, and we readjusted and looked under there, and it was the backing plate. What else did I do? So brakes all around, brakes and rotors all around. Tie rod, did I say tie rod? Sway bar link, sorry, and lower control arm. It came with the full gamut. It was a complete replacement. So pull those 3 bolts, replaced it. It wasn't the end of the world. The thing I will say though, I didn't have torque specs for any of this stuff. I would, if I'm going to work on their car again, I'm going to recommend that they bring me a Haynes manual, just so I have an idea. I don't do this stuff for a living, so if someone's saying, "Oh, get the, I don't know, Mitchell on Demand or one of those professional things," yeah, maybe if it was a one-time buy, I'd get it. But for what I do, it's not. It's totally like helping scratching someone's back, because if I leave from home, he just cuts the grass and no questions asked, and I'll do the same thing for him. So, yeah. But yeah, as far as torquing those bolts, the suspension ones at the bottom, the big bolts, I was just send it with my 1/2-inch impact. And then the rest of them, I just kind of torqued to, at one point he made a clicking sound, and I was like, okay, I guess that works. And then the wheels, I did look up the torque specs, 65 to 79 foot-pounds on the Hyundai Elantra 2012. So did all that. And then got into his engine bay. I noticed his negative battery terminal was super corroded. So I cleaned it up with my my battery cleaner here. I was trying to remove the terminal, but it was stuck. So I just used a little plastic pick to clean it up and vacuum all that stuff up, and then use these cleaners to clean it up. So should be good. Battery, I figured we were there, so I popped open his cab engine air filter. That thing the filter needs to replace but the box was also very dirty. So vacuumed it out, used my little detailing brush to agitate the dirt, vacuumed it out, did all that. Checked his brake bleed, or not brake bleed, but his brake reservoir fluid there, and it was good. I had backed it off, the cap off, before I started pushing back the calipers. He was kind enough to run back to his house, which is next door, and grab his windback tool from Pittsburgh, from Harbor Freight there, because I know I have it, and I have the pneumatic windback tool, and I also have the manual one, and I didn't find it. It's not I didn't find it, I didn't look. So he said he was going to go grab his. In the process of doing that, the boot on the windback, on that cylinder or whatever it is, it started twisting, and it had a small rip in there. Not big, but it was noticeable. So we'll see for next time if they bring it back to me if it's torn further. Because when I started turning it, the thing started twisting. So I had to push and turn at the same time. And I think that's where I was going wrong. I was turning, but I wasn't applying pressure, which doesn't make sense as far as, what I was trying to do. So yeah, got that figured out. That was a lesson learned. He had a valve cover leak, and so we'll probably address that later on. So again, this is just a representation. It's just jogging my memory. So he had a leak from the valve cover on this back end on his car. Washer fluid was good. Coolant fluid was good. His belt had a weird looking dust on it, like it was like shredding apart almost. So I'm kind of curious if it's actually shredding apart. I might actually talk to him again. I was like, hey, let's look at that belt again, because it's like you can see it's like a reddish, maroon reddish, and the dust from it, where something was like eating itself, is like starting to build up on the alternator. And so that's kind of weird. I'd hate for them to experience like a belt that, breaks, and then, the resultant damage or whatever. So I might ask him to pop the hood. I should have looked at it in better detail at the belt and see, or ask him when last the belt was changed. But certainly by the time he comes back for the valve cover, I'll definitely get a good look at it. Engine oil, he said he just done an engine oil, which was kind of made me think, like, if they did an engine oil, why didn't they just clean the battery terminal? Like, yeah. Also, the battery was from 2019, so it's probably nearing its useful life. At least that's the tag that was on it. What else did I do? And then, yeah, the little cover, plastic cover that covers all the top of the engine, popped it off, and there's a mad amount of dust in there, so I just blew it out. That's kind of courtesy. Hooked up the scan tool to it, scanned it, no codes, nothing in the history. So yeah, that's all I did. Helping out a neighbor. I don't know how much I saved him, but I know how much he paid me. But before he talked about, anything like that, we took it for a test drive. He drove it. He said it was pulling to the right, which made sense. I mean, we worked on a major suspension piece on here, so he's going to take it in for an alignment, or he's going to have his wife take it in for an alignment, and hopefully he can get it straight. And hopefully it's not something I did. Hopefully it's not something over tightened or whatever. They're just out of wank, out of wank. What's that? Just wonky. So, yeah, that's all I did. How much did he pay me after we took it for a test drive? And he was like, how much do I got for you? I was like, just let me have a brake cleaner. How about that? And I think he, I'm not sure, because this conversation was had, I don't know, I think he just left this year. But anyway, that's why I was going to be like, hey, I'll just take a can of brake cleaner, even though I had the bulk one. But these are always nice, they're already pressurized and ready to go. Off note, I did not know brake fluid was this. I mean, look at my flashlight. I remember it was on the ground, and I sprayed it. It was sitting under the passenger rear wheel or suspension there, and it just rained down all that brake cleaner on it, and you can see the residue. I don't have any tub of towels, so I'll have to clean it up at some point, but I guess that's just the cost of doing business. It still works. It works just fine. But, so yeah, in the comments, let me know, how much does a job like that cost? Full brake job all around, rotors and brakes, and, the little courtesy stuff that I mentioned, battery, airbox, I don't know, diag, I guess. You got a leak in valve cover. I'm not sure if that's a diag. And then sway bar and lower control arm, because the lower bushing there was torn. How much does that cost in real life? Because I have no clue. And I charge a can of brake cleaner. So hopefully I'm not the most expensive service in town. Anyway, gotta go get I don't know, is this a pedi or a manicure? I don't even know. But I'm not going to get any of those. I'm just going to soak my hand in hot water. Anyway, as me always say, like on a hit a ting.